Let's go over this quick hip activation series. I like to use this to turn on all of my muscles and help me to prep for any workouts that I'm gonna do after this. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to lie on my side, and once you go through this a couple times, I would recommend doing your weak side first. I'm going to get in a straight line from my knees to the top of my head. So hips are extended, all the way fully extended with my knees bent at 90. What I want to do now is keep my shoulders and my hips stacked. Try to use your core to stabilize your pelvis so you're not moving around, and you can put your hand on the ground for balance. What we're going to do is start with a series of external rotation at the hip and internal rotation at the hip. So starting first, I'm gonna rest my feet on top of each other. They're touching the whole time. I'm just going to try to lift up my knee towards the ceiling, give a little squeeze, and back down. I'm gonna go about this pace where I'm squeezing at the top and back down, and I'm going to do 10. Again, trying to keep my hips extended and trying to keep my pelvis as still and stable as possible. After I do the 10 this way, then I'm going to hover my knee right above my other knee. My leg or my shin is floating, and I'm going to try to reach my foot up to the ceiling and tap my foot to the other foot. So doing hip internal rotation. And I'm going to get nice and controlled, give a little squeeze at the top and back down. Squeeze at the top and back down. And I'm going to do typically 10 of these. Then I'm going to move my hips bent at around 45 degrees now. So from here, knees still at 90. I'm gonna do the same series. I'm gonna do 10 external rotation. I wanna emphasize that I'm not pushing with my foot off of the ground or my other foot. I'm just resting my feet on top of each other, and I am using my hip to squeeze at the top. I'm gonna try to get a good squeeze. The better that you get this, the more that you'll be able to squeeze this hip and feel it at end range. So you just wanna get that control. After I do 10 of those, then I'm gonna hover my knee right over my other knee, and I'm gonna try to reach my foot up to the ceiling, try to keep my femur or my thigh nice and still, and tap my other foot when I come back down. So I'm gonna go up, squeeze, tap. Up, squeeze, tap. And I'm gonna try to control this range of motion as much as you can. You should feel like these muscles are starting to turn on, getting some work. After that, I am going to bend my hips and my knees to 90. Again, keep my back nice and flat. And I'm going to do a series of external rotation, squeeze at the top. Again, resting my foot on top of my bottom leg, not pushing off. So I'm going to do 10 of these. Then I'm going to hover my knee over my other knee and do 10 internal rotation and tap my foot on my other foot. Every time at the top, just try to give it a good squeeze. Try to get as much active range of motion as I can. After I do that, you should feel like these hip muscles are working and they're on fire. I am going to spin around. Actually, let me spin around this way. I'm going to spin around so my right leg is on the ground. I'm going to get at a hip bent at 45 degrees, knees bent at 90. And I'm going to do a side plank clamshell, and I'm going to do 10 reps. So again, nice and stable shoulder. Elbow is right underneath my shoulder, keeping my shoulders and my hips stacked again. I'm going to be nice and straight, and I'm going to push into the ground, lift up my hip, and also lift up my other leg towards the ceiling. And I'm going to do 10 of these. That's going to really get those hip abductors, the deep hip stabilizers going. So I'm going to do 10 of those side plank clamshells. Then I'm already on my other side. Let's do your other leg to finish off the series. So again, get nice and straight, hips straight. I'm going to bend my knees at 90, keep my pelvis and core nice and stable, and I'm going to do 10 of the external rotation or 10 clamshells. Little squeeze at the top, keep the hips extended, push the hips forward. After I do 10 of these, then I'm going to hover that thigh over my other leg. I'm going to lift my foot up to the ceiling and bring it down, tap my foot that's on the ground. I'm going to do 10 of these hip internal rotation. Try to keep the pelvis as stable as you can, and you'll feel like your hip is getting nice and warm. You'll feel that burn with this active range of motion. After that, you're going to come hips at 45 degrees, knees at 90. Again, 10 clamshells. Keep that core nice and stable. nice and neutral spine. And after you do 10 of the external rotations, then you're gonna hover that thigh, 10 internal rotations. You're catching on to the pattern now. After I do the 10 of, and I'm cutting it short for this demo, but after I do 10 of the internal rotations, don't rush it, give a little squeeze at the top. Then I am going to do 10 of the hips at 90, knee at 90, back flat, 10 of this external rotation, clamshell movement. Squeeze at the top, take your time with it, get as much range as you can, squeeze your glute. You'll feel it deep in your hip. After that, hover your thigh over. Let's get internal rotation, tap that foot down, reach that foot up, get full range of motion. You'll start to feel which side feels harder or has less mobility or less control. Try to really focus in on making that hip feel like your other hip. Again, don't use your abs, don't crunch up, keep the pelvis nice and still. Then after that, to finish it off, I'll spin around and face the camera. We're gonna finish off with 10 side plank clamshells on this leg. So again, hips at 45 degrees. I like to keep my hips flexed so I'm getting some of that mid-range of hip flexion and trying to use my hip abductors there. And I'm going to push up and back down. Push straight up and back down. Straight up and back down. And after you do this, you'll feel like your hips are nice and warm. You'll feel like you got all of that mobility and that control going. Try doing these. I know it will make a difference. I like to use them as a warm-up or something that I can do to turn on my hips to help me with all of my other exercises.